Are Luther Burden and Brady Cook the best receiver and quarterback duo in the country? Well, if they're not, they're pretty doggone close. So let's talk about that and more right now on Locked On Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball 5 days a week, starting, yes, right now, until all the way through, next May or so. So I got a lot of podcasts to get to, a lot of fun to be had here. And yes, going to talk about Missouri's day down in Dallas here on tomorrow's program. This afternoon, Luther Burden, Eli Drinkwitz, Brady Cook, and Christian Williams going to be talking to the media down in Dallas for SEC Media Days. Again, I'll have that on tomorrow's program. Before we start the show, I do remind you today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And again, SEC Media Days, that's what everybody's talking about right now. I'll certainly have my takes, but for some reason, I just got really fascinated by pass catcher and passer duos, quarterback receiver combos, of course, Brady Cook and Luther Burden. It just got me thinking, where do these guys really rank nationally? Now, first of all, let's start here. I think this is a good starting point for all of us in this argument. First of all, I think Luther Burden at this point is the best wide receiver in the country. Now, am I biased? Yes, of course, the host of the Locked On Mizzou podcast is biased, but Luther Burden is also projected by most to be the first wide receiver taken off the board this coming spring in the NFL draft. So it's not as though I'm going out on a gigantic limb here. So now that we've established that, then it comes down to how much do you like Brady Cook, quite honestly, and how do those two as a duo compare to the rest of the country? Now, first of all, this is just the way that I look at this. This is all an incredibly subjective exercise that I'm about to undertake here. But for me, especially in college football, I want you to have proven something, especially really at the quarterback position. I don't want to just see star rankings from high school. So I'm sorry, Squirrel White from Tennessee. You're a heck of a productive player and have been for quite a few years in the SEC now. However, your quarterback, Nico Iamaleava, simply just hasn't shown me enough yet. He doesn't have the experience to show me that despite his 5-star ranking out of high school, that he is somehow a sure thing to be a great quarterback. Also, if you're a transfer portal guy like, say, Dylan Gabriel, who just transferred from Oklahoma to Oregon, I do think having a new team, I think it's fair to have that be a bit of a ding on your resume for me at this point, because how do we know that you'll be the same in a new offense? Actually, sure, we've seen examples of guys who have gotten better, obviously, as quarterbacks going from one school to another, but I don't think you can just simply assume that. So with all that being said, let's get started on looking at the rest of the country before we even get to my Brady Cook ultimate take here. Well, first of all, look at the Alabama Crimson Tide, right? You're defending SEC champions. I'll just say I'm not the biggest Jalen Milroe guy in the world, their quarterback, and it's just not obvious to me at this point who Bama's stud receiver is, and that's why I think a lot of people right now who are prognosticating in the SEC are a tiny bit cold on the Crimson Tide, just beyond the obvious coaching turnover. They just don't have the type of obvious returning production offensively that a lot of teams in the SEC, like Missouri, quite frankly, has. Now, there's another huge big-name duo from Colorado, Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders. Hey, there's a heck of a duo in terms of name value alone right there. But I'm sorry, a team that finished dead last in the Pac-12. Shedeur Sanders not showing a lot of pocket presence or leadership as the season went along there. There's no way I'm putting those two ahead of Luther Burden and Brady Cook. How about Georgia? Carson Beck is certainly a good player, but who is his obvious number one receiver? Certainly Georgia has plenty of talent all over the field, but is it Dominic Lovett, the former Tiger? Is it Dylan Bell? Is it Ra Thomas? To me, I don't think that's quite as obvious as it is where Luther Burden is an obvious top 10 type pick. I just don't think that player exists on the Dogs roster right now. Now, let's talk about the Kansas Jayhawks. Jalen Daniels, certainly a talented player, but who's his top receiver? Lawrence Arnold? Hey, an appropriate name for a receiver from Kansas, but not a good enough wide receiver, and frankly, Daniels too injury prone at this point. Garrett Nussmeier, LSU. Hey, I think LSU could be a contender this year. But again, if I want something proven, how can I 100% count on Garrett Nussmeier at this point? Colston Loveland, a great tight end at Michigan, is probably a good enough receiver to be a part of this, but the defending national champions, not only do they have a new coach, but tough to trust what I've seen out of Alex Orji so far. Again, another fantastic last name and a whole bunch of them here in college football as usual, but I just can't really trust Orji at this point, so make all your jokes there. But by the way, a Missouri opponent last year, I think probably an underrated pass catching and throwing duo. You got Memphis's Seth Hannigan at quarterback and Rock Taylor at wide receiver. I think those Tigers, the Memphis Tigers, could be a real contender to get that group of 5 spot in the 12-team college football playoff. Miami's Cam Ward and Xavier Restrepo, easy for me to say. I probably still screwed it up. But regardless, those are two really high upside players. I don't totally trust Cam Ward at this point, though. To me, Brady Cook, I just have a lot more trust for him than I do Cam Ward, quite simply. My old stomping ground, my old buddy's stomping grounds, current stomping grounds, in fact, NC State, Grayson McCall and Kevin Concepcion, a really good duo there, but ACC, I don't know. Can I put them as high up as these teams that I'm going to list here in just a moment? Something about Riley Leonard at Notre Dame, their quarterback, leaves me a little cold. Same thing with Will Howard, the Kansas State transfer to Ohio State, though. Emeka Egbuka is certainly a guy that you cannot dismiss whatsoever. Already brought up Dylan Gabriel from Oregon. SMU's Preston Stone and Jake Bailey, and also finally Utah's Cam Rising and Dorian Singer, probably the best of the honorable mentions there. And the thing with Cam Rising and Dorian Singer, both really good players for the Utah Utes. Rising, though, can I see him play a full season? Is that too much to ask? So to me, all of those excellent duos that I just brought up are still behind Brady Cook and Luther Burden in my mind. That should give you an idea of how highly I think of Cook and Burden. But I will say there are 3 duos that I think have an argument to be placed above them. First of all, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a hint here. I think Ole Miss is going to be really good this year. Quarterback Jackson Dart and Trey Harris alone is an incredible duo, but really the Rebels just have a bevy of talented pass catchers this season. And believe it or not, I do think there's something to the win one for Monty Kiffin type of mentality. Of course, Kiffin, the legendary coach and father of Lane Kiffin, just passed away recently. I do think there is something to the, hey, let's rally around the coach, let's rally around Monty Kiffin. There is something psychologically to that. There is a definite group mentality to football, and I think, obviously I feel bad for Lane Kiffin losing his father, but to say the least, but, I do think there is something to that. I really do. So anyway, regardless of that, Ole Miss, to me, offensively, along with Missouri, has as much returning talent as there is. And you know what? So do the Texas Longhorns as well. You go with Quinn Ewers and, frankly, take your pick at receiver. There's a whole bunch of them that you could say really is their number one, and I'd believe you by the end of the season. By the way, just as a side note here, Ryan Wingo is in the college football video game, so hopefully Williams-Nwaneri will be soon. Finally, the Arizona duo Noah Fafita and Tetaroa McMillan. Easy for me to say those two names at Arizona. Certainly among the best duos in the country. I think I'd still have Cook and Burden ahead of those two simply because, well, here's my bias showing, but a little more respect for SEC defenses than Big 12 defenses. Call me crazy. So to me, I think Cook and Burden are maybe third best duo in the country or fourth nationally at worst. And frankly, if I psych myself up for long enough, I can probably take them number one. Regardless of where you think they rank, that just goes to show you why everyone is so high on Missouri coming into this season. And obviously that was a lot of individual player talk, but let's get more into the SEC in general. Where do I think Missouri ranks in terms of the rest of the conference? Let's talk about that coming up here in just a minute. But yes, passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With more than 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Thanks for making Locked On Mizzou your first listen every day. For your second listen, what the heck? Let's get crazy and check out Locked On Razorbacks with John Neighbors. See what crazy things he's up to again lately. In fact, John yesterday at SEC Media Days had an interesting take saying if Sam Pittman is not back next season, he thinks Barry Odom, yes, that Barry Odom, is going to be the next head coach for the Arkansas Razorbacks. Well, that would certainly be interesting, wouldn't it? So again, if you want to check out all of John Neighbors and his rather anti-Missouri takes, check him out over at Locked On Razorbacks. But speaking of the SEC, I got to say, Arkansas, if they're already driving Sam Pittman to the airport at this point, I'd say they're in the bottom tier of the SEC at this point. But when it comes to the top tier of the Southeastern Conference, I have to say, I still think Georgia is in a tier all by itself. And that's no disrespect to Ole Miss or Alabama or Missouri or anybody else. I just think that Georgia is on another level from the rest of college football. And indeed, Georgia did lose a game last season at the wrong time. They lost the SEC championship to the Crimson Tide. And, well, because of that, honestly, I thought they deserved to be left out of the college football playoff just because of how the rest of the season fell. And yet, despite all of that, I don't think there was anybody out there, certainly not me, who thought Georgia wasn't among the four best teams in the country. So I think with Carson Beck returning, of course, at quarterback and a lot of other critical pieces on the way back as well, I just think you have to say Georgia is the pretty clear favorite to win the league, at least as we sit here today. Things can obviously change as the season goes along. But when it comes to that next tier of competition, you know what? I think Missouri's right there. I really do. I think they're right there with Ole Miss. I think they're right there with Texas and, frankly, Alabama. I'm going to leave Alabama in there at this point, just out of respect for the Crimson Tide and the amount of talent that you would think is still in that program. There's been a lot of turnover this offseason for the Crimson Tide, so just so many more unknowns than usual. But it would feel rather disrespectful to knock them out of that tier at this point in the season. I think just below that, You're then looking at teams like Oklahoma, Texas A&M, Tennessee, teams that if they were better than I expected, if they jumped into that second tier, I don't think anybody would be shocked whatsoever, but I think there's enough question marks there. And by the way, a tough enough schedule for teams like Oklahoma in particular that it could be a tough road to hoe in the first year for the Sooners in the SEC. But the bottom line is, I think Missouri absolutely can win the SEC this year. But having said that, I just think it would be ridiculous for me to pick anybody but Georgia at this point in the season. Just trying to be as objective as I possibly can. I just think they have the most talent, the best roster, the best coaching, probably too, to be fair. What has Kirby Smart lost 2 games out of his last 50 or something like that? It's pretty wild what's happened in Athens the last few seasons, and it doesn't seem like this is the year it's going to be slowing down. By the way, I was taken to task in the YouTube comments yesterday by one of my more, I would say, socially awkward listeners to the program about Michael Fasusi, the really, really highly ranked, some places 5-star offensive lineman, some places as high as top 10, 15 in the country overall as a player is Michael Fasusi from the Dallas area. Well, Fasusi put out his top 5, and Missouri made it. He's going to announce his decision in a little over a month on August 21st. And frankly, the reason I didn't bring it up on the show yesterday is just based on what I've read. I think what most of you have read who follow the recruiting services as well is I just don't get the feeling that Mizzou is the choice. Again, there's a whole month to go here. You can't totally count Mizzou out of anything. But it seems like a lot of times includes Missouri and teams that Missouri is winning with, by the way. Take Javen Boggs, for example. I think it was pretty clear for a while that Missouri had a really good shot with Boggs. And meanwhile, the aforementioned Georgia Bulldogs, for example, while you'd think, well, Georgia, my God, they're so good. They should be in on everybody. And they certainly were in on Boggs, but the feeling had been for a long time that Missouri had a much better chance than Georgia. And ultimately, well, Boggs cut it down to 2. The Dogs weren't a part of it. He ends up at Missouri. So again, all this is to say there's also a recent example, speaking of Ryan Wingo. Hey, the feeling was he's going to Missouri, and he ended up at Texas. So, again, it is worth pointing out that Fasusi, especially as highly ranked and regarded of an offensive lineman and just player in general as he is, it is worth pointing out that, yes, August 21st, he's making his decision. Mizzou in the final 5 there. Hopefully there's some maybe rumors going a little bit more Missouri's way than what we've seen at this point. Certainly Texas is a big-time player for Fasusi's services. And I did have to chuckle a little bit. Speaking of Texas, Brett McMurphy, well, over at the Action Network now is Brett McMurphy. He's as plugged in probably as anybody nationally is to the college football scene. Well, over on his X feed, he said, Big Ten SEC unlikely to add Florida State if it leaves ACC and ACC survives, sources told Brett McMurphy. Big Ten and SEC don't want Florida State because adding them doesn't make financial sense, no desire to expand, and, quote, they've been a disruptive partner, end quote, sources said. Now, the thing of it makes no financial sense. Well, when you already have the Florida Gators in the SEC, okay, sure, that makes some sense. If you have no desire to expand by 16, I can buy that as well. The part that cracked me up is when they said Florida State, the sources said they've been a disruptive partner. Well, putting Florida State and their alleged disruptiveness aside, the conference that just added Texas to their ledger is going to talk about a disruptive partner. Let's go cut live to the rubble of the old Southwestern Conference, or the Southwest Conference, and also the former Big 12, which is now a weird conglomeration of 18 million teams or whatever it is now that does not include Texas, by the way. And also RIP to the Longhorn Network. I know we're all losing a lot of sleep and shedding a lot of tears over that, but I just had to chuckle a little bit at the idea that, my God, those disruptive Florida State people when Texas, of all programs, has been added to the SEC. But you know what? Speaking of disruptive, hey, we had some disruption to my usual schedule yesterday as I was spending a lot of time, frankly, probably too much time, playing the new college football video game. I have some thoughts on said game coming up here after these quick words. Well, as all you everydayers are very aware, I like to be a beacon of light and positivity here on the Locked On Mizzou podcast. And when it comes to the EA Sports College Football 25 video game, first of all, it's just great to have a college football game back. It's great to see Missouri back in video game form, especially on the glorious new consoles, PS5 and Xbox One. Furrow Field looks fantastic, by the way. EA Sports did a great job of rendering all the details, the lighting, the fireworks from the north end zone. Really, it all looks fantastic. It really does. The uniforms look great. The players look good. Visually, the game looks quite excellent. And when it comes to the actual mechanics on the field, if you've been a player of the Madden series in recent years, well, the new passing mechanic to NCAA football won't really be new to you. But if you haven't really picked up a game since the old NCAA football, hey, that passing meter is going to be a little bit different. Back in the day, for example, if you were going to throw a bullet pass on a slant or a drag or something like that, you just hold down the button as long as you possibly could. Well, now there's more of a timing element to that where, for example, if you hold on to that button a little bit too long, you're probably going to come up with an inaccurate pass. More skill involved there, and it's a little bit more realistic, too, instead of the old Robo QB who seems to make every accurate pass no matter what his ratings are. I do enjoy that. Now, that's the positives of the game, and I especially, of course, like that for the most part, most of the real players and their names are in the game. Now, there's some notable exceptions to that, especially the Missouri safety room, it would seem, was very much underrepresented here for whatever reason. Joseph Charleston, not in the game as of yet. Neither was Sidney Williams nor Trevez Johnson. So some notable misses there that have really affected Missouri's ratings on the game on defense, by the way. Really, it's more of the guys who are missing that have hurt Missouri's ratings, if anything. Also, at left tackle, Missouri is starting the white Barry Bonds from the MVP baseball game back when Barry Bonds didn't sign with the Players Association, decided to not participate in the game. So there's as I like to call them, the white Barry Bonds. There's a few of those players on as a starting offensive tackle for Missouri, by the way. So reorder those depth charts for sure a little bit. But there are updates to the roster, so hopefully as we go along here into the coming weeks, we'll see guys like Marcus Bryant and Williams Nwaneri added to the game, Joseph Charleston, et cetera, et cetera. One thing I don't like about the game so far, it really feels like defense is just awfully tough right now. Like I don't know how you're expected to get consistent stops. It's right now it's fairly difficult to even get stops against the computer on the higher difficulties that I've seen. It's certainly not impossible, but basically you're just hoping for a sack to kill a drive. That's mostly what's happening here. I don't know, the boom bust running game is very much back. That's to me something that's kind of plagued the Madden series in recent years. That's probably the most disappointing part of the college football video game so far to me. Just there are certain running plays that are just way too overpowered, and then there are certain running plays that just simply don't work. 9 times out of 10, you're going to take a loss, maybe even fumble the ball on a pitch, and that's the thing. The triple option game, the sort of split T stuff that you can play around with a little bit, the flex bone stuff. Again, while some of it works almost too well, the parts that don't work, it's almost unplayable in terms of actually picking, okay, this certain type of option play. Yeah, maybe 1 out of 10 times you'll pop one for a 20-yard run or something like that, but more often than not, you're just getting stuffed. And there's too many plays like that in this series that just don't work as well as they should. I will say, one thing that does feel different, the playbooks have been definitely new, much more new variety in passing routes as opposed to what Madden has seen over recent years. But overall, though, I just was hoping that the college football game would feel just a little bit different than Madden. And right now, to me, it feels a little bit too much like Madden, except on the downside, I actually felt like I had more ability to actually affect the game defensively in Madden for whatever reason. And I basically user control the free safety more often than not. And I'm not doing anything different in the college game, but it just seems like maybe it's because Missouri is just missing so many tackles in this game, but the tackling is just pathetic for the most part. I don't know. The defense is really tough right now in college football. I'm putting up tons and tons of points, and I see a lot of people online are posting screenshots of them putting up tons of points, but the defensive part of the game needs to get a lot better, in my opinion. So that's my take on the college football video game. I'm certainly enjoying it, certainly glad it's back, but there's a few kinks to work out for sure. So hopefully we'll figure some stuff out there, and hopefully you've enjoyed this edition of Locked On Mizzou. Thanks to you everydayers, as always, for making this show your first listen every day. And of course, on tomorrow's program, I'm going to talk about all the goings on for Missouri at SEC Media Days later this afternoon. So until then, I'm John Miller, and thanks as always for listening to Locked on Mizzou.